Good evening and welcome to the very first episode of VI Voices, our very new innovative show here on RTD TV. This show is going to be a show that's designed to discuss a lot of the hot topics and current events going on in our time for us to be able to have solutions to deal with a lot of our issues. On this show you have with me Natalie Nelson, Tang and Clint Ferris, who acts as co-moderators with me. And we'll also be having a lot of guests on our show who will be here to introduce and to talk about new and innovative ideas to deal with these issues. So let's begin with some hot topics, guys.
Let's do it. It's certainly a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to VI Voices.
I'm glad to be here as well.
I think it's going to be an awesome show where we will definitely discuss a lot of the issues of the time and where we're going to have the opportunity to hopefully get a lot of solutions to the many ails of our community. But the one topic I want to talk about first is this issue, as you know, with medicinal marijuana. And there is in the news where we have Senator Positive Nelson, who wants a referendum on the November ballot about medicinal marijuana. How do you feel about that?
Well, I know he's been at this for some time, and I understand that he's putting it forward that it's not his personal perspective, but rather he wants the people to be involved. And so, you know, to the extent that the people want this, then of course the people's voice will be heard. However, I think we just need some more information as to how it will actually benefit the people of the Virgin Islands, how we as a territory will benefit from it before, you know, I could chime in and say yes, no. I don't know how the people feel, although I know, like, for instance, California and other states that have it pretty much have, you know, justification or basis that they have put forward as to why, whether the medicinal purposes, drinking it as a tea, having it, you know, for different sorts of diseases and ailments and so forth. And of course, we may not be too far off from that here in the Virgin Islands, but again, I think as a territory, is that something that we're ready for right now?
I do believe we're ready for not even just legalize medicinal marijuana, legalize marijuana in a whole. I mean, I'm telling you, legalize marijuana. Stop this nonsense. Why people can smoke tobacco? Tobacco needs to be processed.
Well, I would think that there's a little difference between marijuana and cigarettes, tobacco. I mean,
different?
I would think so.
What's the difference?
Well, I would think that it might. Now, I don't smoke marijuana. Let's just put that out on the record.
Neither do I.
But right, none of us do. You didn't answer.
I do.
Oh, okay. But I would think that the marijuana is more mood altering to some degree that the tobacco isn't. I don't know.
But what do they say about tobacco? Isn't it cancer causing?
It is.
But so think about it. I mean, marijuana exists as a plant. You don't need to process it. No additives, whatnot. If the people want to smoke it, smoke it.
But we should be clear that the senator's request for the referendum is not legislation to legalize marijuana, period. It's really for medicinal purposes, meaning you have to have some ailment for you to be able to smoke the marijuana. There will be full regulation. You have to have a prescription for it for you to get it. So it's not so much that it's on a referendum to say everybody can smoke because we want to legalize marijuana.
Well, see, a catch-22 with that, and Clint is right too. Either you do it, how many people can get a prescription and other people can use it?
True.
Is obesity?
So you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
It's not really.
Is obesity one of those conditions you'll be able to use it for? They say when you smoke weed, the metabolism increase, helps keep you skinny and keep you lean. I'm a little bit overweight. Would I be able to get some medicinal marijuana to help me out?
I don't know that answer. But we have a guest today on our show who may know that answer. We could probably ask her
When
we get
we'll get her take on that, right?
But I will say that as far as marijuana is concerned, I believe that for some parts of it, like the personal use part of it, should at least be a civil penalty as opposed to a criminal penalty.
I do agree.
Because of the effect that it has on our judicial system.
And you know, to add to that, though, I don't see how much more detrimental using marijuana is than abusing or using alcohol. You know, the effects of alcohol if you drink and drive could be devastating. And if we're looking at it from the perspective as to marijuana use, for those people who use it recreationally, it comes down to whether it's abused or not. That's actually when it goes to another level, in my opinion. But nonetheless, Senator Nelson has proposed it, and he wants it to go forward as a referendum to see
Right.
what the people think. And I'm interested to see what the people of the Virgin Islands
I
think.
definitely will, and we should definitely keep track of
We should.
how that progresses between now and November.
Definitely.
You know, also in the paper we have the issue regarding how the VI government has been handling bad checks.
Oh, yeah, that
Being-
audit, the
yeah, the
Department of
audit.
Interior's audit.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I really haven't given it as much thought as I would like to, but you know what? It's very interesting that we're in such dire economic straits, and yet still we have these millions of dollars out there outstanding.
$3.3 million according to the audit.
And we're quick to prosecute people who return a check for $150. Okay? And here it is, we have $3.3 million outstanding, and what is the Virgin Islands government who is strapped for cash? And that's the first thing they put out there about the economic dire straits that they're in. And the Department of Audit, I think, has hit the nail on the head in calling them on the inability to collect on what I think is monies that actually can benefit the people. So at the end of the day, what they have set forth in there, and I think I don't know if we have time to go into it in terms of what needs to be done to, start these collections. I think the people who are involved in that
Well, what can be
need
done?
to start.
What do you think can be done for them to recoup that money?
Well, first of them is prosecutions.
But
Isn't that always one of the
But not even the prosecution part is, according to the article in today's newspaper, I believe it's approximately 234 or 235 repeat offenders of
Yes.
of these 1,500 plus people
Yeah.
who have bad checks in the government.
But why do you think they're repeat offenders?
Because our government is not doing exercising due diligence from the beginning.
Well, they're repeat offenders because they have no money.
And because they're
I mean-
because they're not being pursued. There's no enforcement.
Right.
One check is not bad. 2, 3, 4.
But
Come
what's
on, man.
surprising though is that the governor doesn't feel that the audit as it's written is fair to the VI government. That pretty much finance and the other areas have been trying their best to do what they can do to recoup this money, but they can't. And that may or may not be a fair assessment as far as the government of the Virgin Islands is concerned. It's like, look, these people are in hard times, we presume. We have tried to do A, B, C, or D to no avail. So it's not that we're not trying, it's that we can't recoup it. And that might be a fair assessment.
But come on, man. We do understand that the governor should advocate for his government. But this is the same administration who talked about things are bad and they still send people home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to exercise due diligence up front, collect as much money to minimize the back end in terms of causing these adverse conditions that have befallen the United States Virgin Islands.
And this is not the only area where there have lots of money out there. And by
Yeah, you're
millions.
right.
This
You're
is
right.
not the only area. This is one of a number of areas that if they do enforcement and collections, that will make a difference.
But while we're on the issues of the economy, Mitt Romney, Governor Romney has chosen his vice presidential candidate in Congressman Ryan. And today came out in the paper where Governor Romney is trying to distance himself from this economic plan that Congressman Ryan put together. How do you think that pans out for the Romney-Ryan team?
You see, Romney's not showing his true colors. That they are definitely back in the 2004 presidential race, I believe between Kerry and Bush, they call Kerry that he straddles the fence. I think that's what Romney is trying to do. He's straddling the fence. He wants Ryan, but he doesn't want his plan, or he doesn't want to seem that the number 2 man is coming in and he's co-opting the Romney ticket. No, it's actually the
Like Ryan Romney.
Yeah,
I agree.
And that's where Romney is just all over the
he did
place.
introduce him as the president of the United States.
Correct.
In the opening, he said,
But-
the next president of the United States. And I was like, that's
No,
odd.
but see, and I do understand. If you sit as president, you want your number 2 man to aspire for your
Yeah,
job.
when you're already president and
Correct.
you're leaving, but he
Correct.
isn't president yet.
Thank you. So again, he's just trying to please a certain portion of voters, whether it's the Tea Party voter or those conservative independent voters. He's trying to really please them by ingratiating or hugging up on the poster boy Ryan. I think Ryan is the poster boy of that particular faction.
Well, we're definitely going to keep track of that as we go along this election cycle
That will
as
be
well. We'll have to come back later in the show with some more hot topics. We're out of time for hot topics at this time. But on today's show, our very first episode, we have Congresswoman Donna Christensen with us. And we will definitely have some great conversation with her and hear about her platform, what she intends to do as she is in this race, as she goes through a primary and the general election, if she makes it to the general election. So when we get back, we'll have Congresswoman Christensen. We'll be right back. And we are back, and with us we have Congresswoman Christensen. Welcome to VI Voices.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here on your first show.
Absolutely.
The privilege of being the first guest.
Oh, wow. What an honor.
Absolutely.
Delegate.
Congresswoman, you've heard us, we were here when we were discussing the hot topics, and one of the hottest topics of those hot topics was the issue regarding medicinal marijuana and it going under referendum. And one of the questions I think Clint had, or it may have been myself, as to the difference between tobacco versus marijuana, or at least the danger of it. Do they have equal danger, or are they
I don't
different?
think that we really know, because as you smoke and you burn the leaf, we don't know what's coming out of the marijuana. I'm assuming that cigarettes, health-wise, the impact on your lungs is probably worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know, there are reasons why one might want to use marijuana for medicinal purposes. The predominant one is for pain, for people who have terminal cancer. And that alleviates the pain and just gives them a more of a sense of well-being as they go through this very, you know, their last days. And the other one has always been glaucoma. And so there are reasons for medicinal marijuana.
So basically then it will be limited to certain ailments.
Well, I think that's what the referendum is about, medicinal marijuana. And there are probably others. I've been out of medicine now for over 15 years, so there may be other uses for it in medicine that I'm not familiar with.
Now, Congresswoman, you have actually been in Congress, I think, since 94?
97. I ran in 94 and lost in the primary.
Okay, so 97. So you've been there like 15 years. Okay. What has your experience been in that time frame?
Well, Congress has changed tremendously in that time frame. We were much more bipartisan when I first came in. We used to have retreats together, and there was more of a spirit of trying to sit down and work out your differences before you even got to the floor. I remember when I was on Small Business, Nydia Velasquez and Jim Talent, Nydia the Democrat, Jim Talent, we'd never go to a markup where they hadn't already discussed what they could do together and what they couldn't do together. And that's gone. That's gone. Most times it's either one party runs the whole show and that's it.
What do you think has contributed to that deterioration?
Well, I think it started when there was a Bush presidency and the Republicans had control of both the House and Senate. It started to move away from that bipartisan working together. But the Tea Party has really contributed to the changes over the last couple of years.
And now, Delegate, knowing that you served at the latter part of the Clinton administration,
Yes.
and you served all throughout the Bush administration, and you happen to have served during the first African American president in the country's history, what would your legacy be to the Virgin Islands and to the nation as a whole?
I think my greatest legacy continues the work that I did before I went into Congress, is in healthcare. And even though I can tell you that we have more than doubled Medicaid dollars beginning at the end of last year and going forward for the next 10 years at least to begin with, over my 15 and a half years, we've gradually increased the Medicaid, but we've tremendous increase. But also the other provisions of the Affordable Care Act. I went on Energy and Commerce as the first delegate ever to sit on an exclusive committee, including the delegate from the District of Columbia, at an opportune time to sit on the Health Subcommittee and actually go through piece by piece, line by line, title by title, the provisions of that bill and ensure as much as we could that the territories, the Virgin Islands and the other territories were included. And we did a bang-up job in the House. We did a great job in the House. We had more money for Medicaid. We had more money for exchanges. We changed gave the Secretary the authority to change the match, which is still an issue for us. When it went to the Senate, they took all of that out. And we had to fight to get it back in. And there were many meetings with our leadership, but mostly then over on the Senate side with their leadership, and several meetings with the White House. And we were supported, of course, by the Black, Hispanic, and Asian caucuses very well on those issues.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. We've been trying to get a handle on the Affordable Health Care Act that the president has signed, which is commonly called Obamacare, and what effect that would have on the people of the Virgin Islands. I think we may not necessarily be following it the way that we should, or the bill is so exhaustive that we don't really know exactly what's in it, particularly as it affects the people of the Virgin Islands. Share with our audience, what can the people of the Virgin Islands look for or look towards this bill coming into fruition?
Many people have already experienced the benefits, especially our Medicare population. Forget that line about how Democrats took over $600 billion out of Medicare. We didn't. We reduced waste, fraud, and abuse. We equalized the payments, and that's where that money came, and we reinvested it back in. So many of our Medicare beneficiaries have had their free preventive services, free exam, gotten a rebate as we work to close the donut hole where they've fallen and they get no help for their medication. And we've actually lengthened Medicare by 8 years, the solvency. But the consumer protections, you cannot deny a child with pre-existing disease. We have sickle cell children with asthma, and they cannot be denied. And I know they used to be denied. Diabetes, keeping your child on your parents' insurance until they're 26 years old. I had to drop Karita off of mine, when she turned 22. And other protections that are there, that are worldwide. There are just two provisions we don't get, and one is that special insurance that goes until the exchange comes with adults with pre-existing disease. As long as we keep that bill, which is really dependent on the elections in November, we will be able to have no exclusion for pre-existing diseases for adults either.
Okay, so let me
carries over to the territories.
So let me ask that. So at this point, that part of it is not including the territories.
That part is not included.
When will that happen though?
2014, when it happens for everybody.
For everybody else, okay.
When it happens for everybody else. But my healthcare contributions go beyond that to include making sure we're included in the Children's Health Insurance Program, increasing funding for HIV and AIDS. One of the first things I worked on was the Minority AIDS Initiative, and it has been under me for the past 12 years to increase those dollars and make sure that they went to communities like ours, and we got our fair share. So there are many other contributions in healthcare, in addition at the university, because I've worked so closely with NIH. Now, the university did apply for the grant, and they did a great job of applying, but having me there, who has been a friend to the National Institutes of Health, really helped. And they have a center that is doing disparity research.
Excellent.
As you said that, though, do you think your being there and your having seniority is of any advantage to us in the territory?
Oh, absolutely, because I'm known, and I have helped others. I have helped agencies, I have helped organizations, I have helped industry, and so those things come back to really help us. And I'm known, I have developed those relationships both on and off the Hill, Republican and Democrat. And other contributions, though, funding, rum revenue has been increased by $15 million every year since 1998. Road money has been increased since about 2004. Secretary of Transportation will be in by the time this is probably aired. He's coming in this week. We hope to take him on some of our bad roads. We don't understand how much more money we need.
Yes, please take him on the roads.
And so as a matter of fact, we would have had to lay off more people probably if I had not been able to get our authority to borrow or to float bonds for any public purpose. We were the only jurisdiction that did not have that authority. And I did that during the Turnbull administration at his request. And so the territory was able to borrow, for better or for worse, but it kept us afloat during a time when everybody else was already laying off. And we also did some other work with bonding that has made it more beneficial for the territory to get the kind of funding that we need.
And delegate, if I can step back a moment, Ms. Attorney Nelson asked about seniority and how meaningful it is within the Washington belt, and how meaningful it is for the delegate coming from a small territory like the Virgin Islands to be a ranking member. Is that just in just name only, or is it really meaningful to the people, and does it really bring benefit back to the shores?
The seniority brings all kinds of benefits. When the rankings are going around or when the chairmanships are going around, they go from the top. You have decisions to make. I had to make a very difficult decision whether to limit myself to insular affairs and be the ranking member, or go to this exclusive committee that has jurisdiction over energy and healthcare and consumer protection and the environment and broadband and all of that. And I elected to go to that committee. I was off the committee when the Republicans came in, but because of my seniority, as soon as somebody left, I was the first one put right back on there. So when positions are being given out, how long you've been there makes a difference. But there's also, what have you contributed? How well have you worked with everybody? What kind of support have you given your leadership? And what have you done yourself being there? And I think that all of that I bring to my bid for re-election.
Well, I know you talked about the, let's go back to the floating of the bonds, and I know that you're instrumental in the rum cover-over.
Oh, yes.
Right? And I see that recently we've been having some challenges from the Caribbean nations relative to the advantages that the U.S. Islands, territories, including Puerto Rico Commonwealth, have over these islands, and they're now trying to have it, in essence, pulled back, right? What's your thoughts?
Well,
on that?
they're trying to have the World Trade Organization say that this is an unfair subsidy.
Right.
And, you know, I'm one of the two people who are from the English-speaking Caribbean, so to speak, me and Yvette Clark, and I work very closely with a lot of the Caribbean countries. So it puts me in a very bad situation when they're questioning something that the Virgin Islands has done. I think we're in a very good position vis-a-vis the WTO and any challenge that might come. I don't think that the case that they're making is going to rise to such a level that will be sanctioned because of how subsidies are done worldwide. And so I think we're in pretty good shape. I was able to speak with our U.S. Trade Representative. The other thing that seniority has brought me is it's given me more entree into the White House, you know, and some of the cabinet level people, and so we've been able to talk about it, and I think we're in pretty good shape. Cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
No,
We're going to watch that.
Now, Delegate, when I posed a question to you regarding your legacy, and one thing that was starkly missing from that was one of fiscal responsibility. We all know that you have been pushing the CFO bill, and you got a passage of that bill this week.
Again.
Okay. Now, there are two forms of that bill. One that you put forth in the 108th Congress, and this present one that was passed. And I noticed that the real meat of that first bill was taken out, one that really gave the Virgin Islands some oomph. Whereas now, to me, it's a feel-good bill, and in a time where our legislators and citizens are clamoring for transparency and all of that
So
stuff.
for our audience, so what's the meat that you think was taken?
The meat was that
There was much more authority of the CFO to step in.
He's trying to say
and
he's trying to tell you what's watered down and why.
You know, well, here I am. People say I'm taking people back to colonial times, and other people are saying we need more oversight.
Yeah.
I agree that we need more oversight, but you try 3 times and you can't get it through.
Yeah.
You try to do what you can. This CFO is exactly like the CFO in Washington, D.C., and it has worked for them for almost 20 years now. But it does not trample on any authority of the governor or the Office of Management and Budget. It simply lets the people and the legislature and the decision makers know exactly what we are working with. And that's a question we don't know. We don't know.
Well, that has always been a top question.
And, you know,
do we really have?
there's some people who would like the federal government to come in and take over, period. There's some people who want more, they want the first bill. And perhaps when we have the referendum in 4 years, because this is a temporary position, which the people will decide when in about 4 years after it's been passed,
Right.
whether they want to keep it or not. We can have that decision be whether we want the full CFO or whether we want the one that I'm now proposing, which I think I have a better chance of getting passed. Sometimes you try the big thing you 3 times, and you take a step back and you take it in smaller steps, and perhaps you might be more successful along the way.
Okay, so we'll monitor that too.
Definitely, we will.
Now, the other big issue is that of the Constitution
Yes.
for the Virgin Islands, which has just been, I don't want to say that the constitutional draft has been divisive. I don't think it's the draft. I think it's the proponents and opponents of it have created or has used it as the catalyst for a divisive community. I'm sure that you're going to say that, of course, the Virgin Islands deserves to have a constitution.
Absolutely.
But
It should have one.
as of late, we've had where our Senate President and the local legislature have brought forth legislation to hijack, what I call hijack the process.
And I would add that, I would use that word.
Okay, so I take that you still believe that the people of the Virgin Islands, through the 30 people they elected,
Absolutely.
should deal with that constitution.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We elected those people for that purpose, and they should be the ones to take it on from here and address the areas. If they are going to address, they don't have to change them, they have to reconsider them. And then it goes back up to the president and the Congress, and should come right back down to the people to vote. But there was a point at which the Senate side was so livid about this bill that they were going to pass a law to just do away with it and end the process right there. And we were able to negotiate with them to have it come back to the Constitutional Convention. The question is the Constitutional Convention duly seated right now? Or did they end their ability to work at the time at which they passed on the Constitution? And that's a question that the Senate should answer. They should just clarify that and let it move on, because there is funding from Interior, because I also said, well, but we have to provide them some funding.
Right.
And Interior is going to provide about $150,000 for them to just finish up, to reconsider and finish
Well,
up.
I don't believe that they've ended. I think once that went to Congress and Congress sent it back down to revisit, it kept them open. Because if Congress had sent it back down, they would have to then go through that education campaign before it gets to our elections. So I personally still believe that they are still proper party to work on it.
There are people who are delegates to the convention that insist that they have the authority to meet.
Now, I'll ask you, what are you currently working on now in Congress that, for the people of the Virgin Islands, that you would like to continue working on?
There are a lot of things, and I know our time is limited, but some of the things, one of the main things that we're working on is something called the Virgin Islands Improvement Act. It's a special retirement fund that would be set up here, and the way it's structured, it raises approximately $50 million a year for the territory. And right now that's slated to go for infrastructure. But I would like to also revise it as we go through it to make sure that we put some of that money in the GERS. Because I don't know where else the money is going to come from. And I think that's very, very important. I have not started working on this as a legislation. I'm still doing the research on it, but I think it's very important for me to help clarify what is the requirement, or what are the requirements for initiative and recall. And that will be a community process.
Okay.
But we're going to do that. I have a visa waiver bill that I know we're not going to get much done in September because it's going to be a short session and then we'll be out in October. Could possibly be tied into something at the lame duck. Visa waiver to allow people to come in to shop, allow people to come in and use our healthcare, our cancer center and our cardiac center. I have legislation to change the match, because we changed it somewhat to 55-45 instead of 50-50, but it really needs to be closer to 75-25, 75 federal, 25. And we were able to do it in the House, take it out in the Senate. I need to get it back in.
So it's important for us to get the Democrats back on both
critical
houses.
I heard you talk about Romney backing away, but you can't back away now. You're tied to the man.
Yeah.
You're tied to his agenda. You brought him in knowing what his agenda was. His agenda is reduce the taxes on the rich, which keeps us in deficits for years to come, longer than the president's budget would, and cut almost 2/3 of the money from programs that help the poor and the middle class. That's earned income tax credit, food stamps, housing assistance, Medicaid, Medicare. That's where he's taking the cuts, to be able to provide an extra benefit in terms of taxes for the wealthy. I'm with the president. I believe in shared sacrifice. I want everybody to share in the bad times and help us get out of them, and everyone to share in the benefits. And the only way that will happen is with an Obama administration, and hopefully a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate.
And as a territory, what can we do?
We need to
ensure
call.
that?
We need to call everybody and write to everyone and email. We need to send the $3 when they ask for it. But yes, we can exercise our influence by just reaching out to everyone that we know, the people in the organizations we belong to, and making sure that they not only vote, but they work from now until November to make sure that we have the maximum number of voters out there.
Any final comments you want to give to the people of the Virgin Islands?
Well, to the people of the Virgin Islands, I have a primary on September 8th, and I'm offering once again my experience, my seniority, the knowledge that I have developed in legislating, the relationships that I've developed over the years, and to share. I will continue to share with you a lot of the accomplishments that we have made that have contributed to the well-being of this territory, and we can continue to do that. But in a time of crisis, in a time when there's a lot of insecurity around, this is the time to not change. This is the time to have a steady hand, one who has been there, who knows the work, and who has the relationships and the seniority to help the territory get through a difficult period.
Thank you, Delegate.
Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank
being
you.
our first guest.
It's an honor again.
Thank
VI
you so much.
Voices.
Yes.
We wish you well.
Thank
Thank
you.
And we'll
you.
be looking at the
What I'll ask for you to do is just stay around, because we're going to take a break and then we're going to do some final hot topics. And so if you could just stay around so you can do some hot topics with us, that would be awesome.
Oh,
Don't be afraid.
but don't be afraid.
We'll be back in a moment. And we are back as we have our final hot topic, which comes from a Facebook question from one of our viewers, Yoki K. Hanley, and she asks, do you, support the United States Virgin Islands becoming a part of the U.S. Customs Circle in the same way that Puerto Rico is? And if so, how will you work to make that happen, and for when?
Well, we are outside of the U.S. Customs Zone, which has worked well for us until recently. And that's been since the treaty in which Denmark sold the Virgin Islands to the United States, and it goes for 100 years. So it takes us up to 2017. I believe at that time we have an option to choose to be in or out. Until then, we've asked the General Accountability Office to give us analysis of the pros and cons, because it has allowed us to build our cruise ship industry, to have our extra duty-free capabilities here that other countries don't have, and it's really supported our tourism industry. So we need to really be clear about the pros and cons of being inside or outside of the customs zone. And in the meantime, we work to try to get, I know Yoki's issues are shipping out of here or shipping in, the cost, and so forth. We're still working on trying to do something that might waive that situation for our constituents and our business people, because especially now it's an extra hardship that they have a difficult burden with. But we're looking at it, and in 2017, by that time we'll have educated the people
Excellent.
on the pros and cons, and we can make a decision.
Okay, so Yoki, there's your answer. And we're going to have an education campaign on that issue, because I too would like to have some more education on that whole process.
That's why we're called foreign, because in shipping we are considered international.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, I think it's been an excellent first show. I thank you so much, Congresswoman Christensen,
You're
for
welcome.
coming
Thank
on
you.
VI Voices, being our first guest on our pilot episode, and we
Thank
are
you.
so grateful for having you here. I think that the people have learned a lot. Our goal on this show is to ensure that the people of the Virgin Islands are able to be enlightened and educated on the issues of the day so that we can make sure that our voices are heard as we go through this process. So we don't have that kind of apathy that a lot of other nations have when it comes to that. And so we thank you so much, Clint, of course. Thank you, and Natalie,
Thank you
for being here, of
very much.
course,
Best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
in your
And
business.
good luck with the show. I
Thank you much.
know it's going to be a hit.
Thank you so much. And audience, remember, your voice can make a difference. Good night.
Thanks for